I want to start a new sermon series today. It's called Questions. And the first week, we're going to talk about this particular question: why are you so afraid? How many of you have ever asked God questions? Anybody in your prayers, God, why me? Why am I in this situation? Why have I done that? Why am I the one that gets this disease? Or why am I the one who loses my job? Why am I the one going through all these problems? We ask questions to God so many times, and then we listen for an answer, and sometimes we don't always find out why. Well, I wanted to turn it around today. I wanted to go through and I wanted to follow some of the questions that Jesus asked His disciples while He was on earth. He asked them questions. And he was really good at that, asking the right questions at the right time. And so today, it's why are you so afraid? I can tell you this, that Jesus asked over 100 recorded questions in the Gospels. 100 different times He asked His disciples questions, or different people questions, because He wanted to understand what they wanted, or what they needed, what they thought they needed. He wanted to understand those things. So the first one, in a storm, why are you so afraid? When the storm comes, why are you so afraid? That's the first week. That's this week. Next week, we're going to talk about need a miracle. And the question is, do you believe I can do this? And we're going to talk about some of these things. The next question, do you want to be well? There's an ongoing challenge in this body that we live in. It seems like all the time we deal with physical problems. Then the next one, why do you doubt? These are spiritual doubts. Why do we doubt God? Why do we think He can't come through when it's really needed? Those are some of the things we're going to deal with over the next few weeks. We're going to talk about the questions that Jesus asked. And so we'll jump right in with the first one here. This question, why are you so afraid? And the scripture comes from Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. Like I said, I've preached this sermon, I don't know how many times, as a funeral message. But I want to bring it to you today from a different direction, to take a better look at it and apply it to our lives. Let's go to Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. If you don't have that, it's on your notes that were passed to you. I don't have all the scriptures up here today because you have a Bible. And if you don't carry your Bible, you really need one. If you don't carry your Bible, you may have a cell phone. And if you need the code for our internet, come see me and I'll make sure you get that so that when you come here, you'll have internet. But we want you in the Word. We want you reading the Word. Let's go into this together. It says, set it up just a little bit. Jesus was teaching from a boat. The crowd had pressed in on Him all day long, and they just kept pressing and pressing and pressing. And He's standing by the Sea of Galilee, and pretty soon He's standing in the water up to His ankles, and then up to His knees. People just kept pressing. They wanted to be close to Jesus. They wanted to hear what He had to say. So He told His disciples, get me a boat, and He preached from the boat. He's out in the boat, and He's preaching, and he preached for quite a while that day. But then we go into the next part of the story, starting at verse 35. That day when evening came, He said to His disciples, let us go over to the other side. Leaving the crowd behind, they took Him along just as He was in the boat. And there were also other boats with Him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke Him and said, Teacher, don't you care if we drowned? He got up, He rebuked the wind and said to the waves, Quiet, be still. Then the wind died down and it was completely calm. He said to His disciples, and that's the question for today, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? They were terrified and they asked each other, Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Wow. Wow. That's some kind of scripture right there. I mean, it's one of the miracles of God, and we know that's what it is, and we understand it, we see that, but when that begins to settle in and understand that a little better, I had a picture, I think, a little while ago. Can you go back to the picture? There's Sheila and I were just in Israel, of course, and we were on the Sea of Galilee in a boat, and we were looking across to another boat. This other boat was closer to the shore, but that's kind of the direction that maybe Jesus was preaching from, that's near Capernaum. And so he was there preaching at the shoreline. People were gathered around him, or gathered around the shore close to the boat so that they could hear him. But I can tell you a few things about the Sea of Galilee. It's 680 feet below sea level. And as you can see, it's surrounded by hills and mountains. In fact, all the way around the Sea of Galilee. And so what happens is as the weather comes through, it'll blow over those hills, those mountains, and sometimes a storm will come into that area very quickly that's kind of unannounced. It's kind of like when you're trying to see down the street and you live in town and your neighbor's house is there in the direction that you want to look, and you have to walk out to the street to see where the ambulance went. You know what I'm talking about? You know, they couldn't see the weather coming because the mountains were all around them or the hills were all around them. Off in the distance there may be bad weather coming and you couldn't see it. They didn't have NOAA weather radio back in those days and didn't have frequencies for hearing what the weather was going to be. So they decided, in fact, it was Jesus who decided that they would cross this lake to the other side. Now, here's how this applies to us. How many of you have ever been sick? Oh my, really? How many of you have ever been working in a job and got laid off? Anybody? How many of you have had, I probably better not go there. I was going to say, you know, I'm not even going to touch it. I don't want to dig stuff up that we don't even want to think about. We've had all kinds of problems in our life. Sicknesses, relational problems. We've had, you name it, it's there. You know, you're dealing with a personality, somebody else, a coworker, and there's problems, there's difficulty. Things change, and because of that change, you're out of work, or this or that way. We could just cover this all day long, and we can call all of those things storms that you didn't see coming. You ever had a storm you didn't see coming? It hit your life, and then all of a sudden, man, you're like, wow, where did this come from? How did this happen? You know, you might have had signs. You can see a few black clouds in the sky or whatever, but all of a sudden, I mean, it pours. Thunder and lightning. And I can tell you another thing about the Sea of Galilee. It's not a very deep body of water. Just kind of like Lake Erie. Lake Erie's not really that deep when it compared to the other Great Lakes. And when storms come, that's why so many ships have been lost on Lake Erie, because the waves can go so high, it's such a shallow body of water. Wind moves the water, and pretty soon, you know, ships are in major trouble. The same thing with the Sea of Galilee. It's just that kind of sea. But I can tell you that we've been through storms in our life. In fact, we went through one not too long ago, and I'll share with you here in a little bit. But we've all been through storms, and you've hit those times, and sooner or later you're 2 house payments behind, or your car breaks down and you don't have a way to get to work. It's a storm that comes out of nowhere, and it hits you right where you live. That's the kind of thing we're talking about. So there's 2 things to remember. What I want you to do is remember 2 things that happen in the storm. 2 things that happen in the storm. The first thing is Number one, you're in the storm with His presence. That's the first fill-in. I've only got a couple fill-ins there today, but maybe some places to take notes if you need to. But you are in whatever storm you're in. If you know Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, if you know Him and have a relationship with Him, He has not left you in the storm. He is with you. His presence is there in the midst of the storm with you. The second one is this. You're in the storm for His purposes. That's the second thing. Okay? Let's talk about the first one. You're in the storm with His presence. Of course, Mark chapter 4, verse 37 and 38 say this. A furious storm or a squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. Wonder why He could be so calm, resting. I know He was tired. He preached all day from the boat. I knew he was tired, but how in the midst of the boat rocking back and forth and the water coming over the sides, how could He just calmly sleep and rest through all that? He must have been related to my wife. Because a tornado could hit our house and carry her bed out into the middle of the yard, and she'd wake up in the morning and go, ugh, ugh. What's going on? Me, on the other hand, if the wind blows just a little bit, I hear it outside. I mean, I sleep on the edge of awake. She sleeps like, yeah. Is that what it is? We had our kids when, they were little, and our kids, of course, kids get sick in the middle of the night. Anybody know that? If they get sick, it's going to be in the middle of the night, okay? I would be up taking care of kids, and she is snoring, sawing logs. I'm all by myself screaming, Sheila! I got 2 kids puking in here. Sheila! She's sleeping. So I said a tornado could carry her away. She wouldn't wake up until it was all over with. But that is the thing. We all go through those storms, and we've been through storms in our life. But Jesus could sleep through the storm calmly because he just is who He is. He is God. So the question we ask God, and I've done this, and I don't know if you've done this or not, but I've done this. God, if You are with me, if I am saved, if You're really with me, then why? Or maybe I should change that. Would I really truly be going this if You were with me? I've asked that question, but I think sometimes that question comes from the evil side. It comes from Satan whispering in our ears saying, well, if He was truly with you, you wouldn't be going through all these problems. Anybody ever heard that voice? You're having these problems because you're away from God, and God doesn't care about you, and He doesn't want to be with you. He doesn't want to have anything to do with you. God doesn't love you. That's the evil one. Call him a liar, put him back where he's supposed to go. Just tell him, go back to hell where you belong. You're a liar. Don't talk in my ear. Because we ask that question because we think that's the way it's supposed to be. Having Jesus in the boat doesn't mean that the storm is not going to rock you. Just because He's in the boat doesn't mean you won't go through a storm. It's just not going to sink you. You got me? You're still going to go through storms. You're still going to struggle. You're still going to have physical problems. You're still going to lose jobs. You're still going to go through those things. But He is with you, and He will not let you sink. He is with you in the storm. Do you ever have anybody ask you, with the problems you're going through, how do you do this? How do you do what you do? The stuff that you go through, the illness you deal with, the problems you've had, how do you still hang on? You ever had anybody ask you that question? Because people, that's a witness that we have in front of people. That means when something bad happens and everybody sees it and they go, oh my, something bad has happened, will this shake them away from their faith? It should never really shake us away from our faith. It should only make us draw closer. I think a lot of the times the answer that we come back with when we go through something is, when they say, how are you doing this? I'm not doing this by myself. I can't do this by myself. I am not strong enough to be able to fight this disease. I'm not strong enough to be able to worry about these issues. I'm not strong enough. I can't do it on my own. I don't have the strength. Because I can tell you this, it's His strength, His grace, His power, His presence that helps you through the storm. Never let the presence of a storm cause you to doubt the presence of God. You know, I think I try to figure out where we get this mindset at. And it must be because we love our kids so much. We try to protect them from the things of life that will hurt them or let them, have problems and those kind of, we're always protecting our kids. And that's the right thing to do. Doesn't God protect us? Yes, He does. But when our children got to the age of their own understanding, they began to make decisions that probably weren't your decisions, wouldn't you say? Doing things that you probably wouldn't agree with, wouldn't you say? Yeah, of course they did. At that point, you can't be there to protect them, okay? At that point, you can't fight that battle for them. But you can back them up. You can pray for them. You can tell them that you love them. You can walk them through and help them through the things that they go through. That's a picture of what God is doing for us. Some of the storms in life that we go through, we have to remember that He is there. He's going to help you through that process. Got a couple verses here. Psalm chapter 46, verse 1. And it seems like I use a lot of these verses when it comes to a funeral because this is the place that we live in the midst of a funeral. The first one, God is my refuge and strength, my ever-present help in trouble. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5 says, He'll never leave me, He'll never forsake me. Put those in your head and keep them there, okay? Every time a storm comes up, God will never leave me, He'll never forsake me. He is on my side. He is my refuge and strength. And He is my ever-present help. He will help you when it comes to those issues, those problems. Let's go to the second thing that we talked about. That second fill-in. You're in the storm for His purposes. That's the hard one to understand. But let me remind you about something in this story that maybe you didn't pick up. Jesus was the one who said, let's go over to the other side. In other words, they left this side, which would be the west side of the Sea of Galilee, and they were going to cross over to the east side of the Sea of Galilee. They were going over there looking for a specific guy. Jesus knew who He was looking for because they pulled up right where this guy was. That's the end of the story. This trip was Jesus' idea. Did Jesus know a storm was coming? What do you think? Is He God? Jesus knew the storm was going to happen when they crossed that lake. Does Jesus know about the storm you're getting ready to go into or the storm you're in? Okay, let's look at this a little further. I can tell you that going into the storm was planned. It was a planned activity. They didn't experience the storm because they were out of God's will. They experienced the storm that was in God's will. That's the thing that we struggle with. Why would God allow me to go through some of the things that I'm going through in my life? Why would He allow these things to happen? Did God cause the storm? Maybe. Maybe not. But I can tell you that if God caused it or allowed it, let me change that. I can't tell you if God allowed it or caused it. But I can tell you that He is with us. He always uses it. He always uses the storm that you go through for a purpose. James chapter 1 verses 2 through 4 says this: "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Let me tell you about the storm that Sheila and I just went through before we went to Israel. We had planned to go, and we had a week's time to come up with, $1,500 or something like that. I think $1,200. We had a week's time to come up with it if we wanted to go and be a part of this. So God made sure we had that. And then every month after that, there was $1,200 that we had to come up with extra. We still don't know where that money came from. We're not exactly sure, but God provided. He made sure that happened. The week before we were supposed to go, 2 weeks before we were supposed to go, Sheila had a procedure, a mammogram. The mammogram came back bad. Okay? They called her on the phone. "We want you to come in for another one." So we scheduled. She went in for the second one. And we came out of that, and they said, "We recommend that you just wait 6 months and we'll take another picture and we'll look to see again, see what's going on." And Sheila said, and I felt in my spirit the same thing, "I'm not satisfied with that. We're not sure that's what we want to do. Because if there's something in there, we think it ought to come out." And so we went to see the surgeon. Okay? 2 weeks before. This is 2 weeks before we're going to Israel. Okay? We're going on a plane to Israel for 2 weeks. Went to the surgeon. The surgeon said, well, after looking at the pictures and things and everything, I too think I would tell my wife if she were in the same condition, wait 6 months, let's take another look. So we were satisfied with that. We felt like that was, going to be okay. The weekend before we were to leave, I started having chest pains. Ended up in the emergency room. In the emergency room, of course, they ran the normal things. They check your enzymes to make sure you haven't had a heart attack. They put, what's the nitroglycerin, explosive stuff they put under my tongue. And I took that, and they set me up with an appointment with a cardiologist. And this is the week before we're going to Israel, okay? I'm having heart problems the week before we go to Israel. And so we set it up to have a stress test. I'm supposed to be there, what was it, Monday, Tuesday? Tuesday morning I was supposed to have the chemical stress test, okay? That's where they inject you with this stuff, and it glows, and you glow, and they turn the lights out and they can look at, no, they put you through this machine and it shows how your heart's working, shows if there's any damage, anything like that. So I get up Tuesday morning and I fasted, had to fast, got up Tuesday morning, and they called me on the phone and they said, "Mr. Burroughs, our machine is broken. Don't come today." we'll set you up again for, and it was Wednesday, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember in my head. Thursday. We'll set you up again for Thursday. It's supposed to be fixed by Wednesday. We'll set you up again for Thursday. Cool. Okay. So I'm worrying all week long, go through. And we get to Thursday. I fast, do everything, show up at the hospital. And the lady comes out and she said, "Didn't they tell you?" I said, "Didn't they tell me what?" And she said, "Our machine is broken again." Wednesday, it worked all day. I was the first one on the schedule for Thursday. It's broken. It doesn't work. So they said, "We're not sure what we're going to do. We'll schedule you for next week." And I said, "Nuh-uh. Next week I'll be in Israel." And they said, "What? Oh, maybe we better work on getting you in there quicker and sooner, see if we can take care of this." I said, "Well, what if they just put me on a treadmill like they used to and put the probes all over me and things, and then, they do a ultrasound of your heart and all that kind of stuff." I said, "Can we just do that one instead of the chemical one?" And the lady says, "Well, I don't know. We'll have to ask the cardiologist." So she calls the cardiologist, and he goes, "Oh, the machine's broke. What do you want to do?" I said, "Can we just do the regular one?" So Friday, it was Friday, the day before we leave, okay, they bring me into the hospital. They put all these things I have a stress test. I'm running 100 miles an hour going straight up and down on this treadmill, and my heart is working like crazy. And they bring me over and they do the scan of my heart, and the doctor comes in and everybody's standing around. He goes, "There's nothing wrong with your heart. You need to go. You can go to Israel. I have no problems with you going to Israel." Sometimes the devil will throw you into the midst of a storm. Sometimes God allows that to happen just to see how you'll react. You see, when we hit like a few days before, I said, "Sheila, I don't know if I can go to Israel or not. I don't know if I'm going to get over there and have a heart attack." I said, "It'd be a great place to die, but I'm not sure I want to do that." And so we prayed. It was Thursday afternoon. I said, "We've got to make a decision. They may not even be able to schedule this other thing. We've got to make a decision. Are we going or are we staying home?" Do you see the storm we were in? Sheila's bad results. I'm worried about Sheila. We're stressed over the trip, and my health is going bad. And something's saying, "You can't go. We don't want you to go. You can't go there." But I can tell you this. When we prayed, I said, "God, you wouldn't have made it possible for all this money to happen so that we could go if this wasn't your plan." We have faith no matter what the doctor says. No matter if they take me in there and they say "You've had a heart attack" and all this other stuff, and we're going to go anyway. We're just going. What a storm. Guess what? We went. No problems. And you know what? God was with us all the way through. The worry, the stress, the problems, the pain, all the junk. He was with us the whole way through that process. And I think He just wanted to see if we were going to be obedient. He'd made everything possible. Here's what happens. Sometimes God sets up things in your life and makes it absolutely perfect. You can follow the path, it's straight, you got plenty of light to see it, and you can go and you can go and you can go. But as soon as it makes a bend or it gets a little dark, as soon as we start having a problem, we think God's not there. Shame on you. Shame on you. Shame on me. Why? Because as soon as the problems start coming, we go back to that sentence that Satan whispered in our ear a long time ago, saying, "He is not with you. He doesn't care about you." Folks, He's with you in the storm. He's with you in the problems that you go through. Here's my thing for you today. The fear of the storm in our story was replaced by the fear of the Lord. Folks, don't be scared of cancer. Don't be scared of losing your job and losing your house. Be afraid of the one who can control all that stuff. Be afraid of the one who can say to the storm, stop! Quiet, be still. And let me tell you what happened in that. I get this picture in my mind that, man, everything is going nuts. They're in the middle of a tempest. And the waves are splashing up and over the boat, and the lightning is flashing, and thunder's roaring, and the rain is pouring, and the waves are, and they're actually thinking, these seasoned fishermen think they're going to drown. And then Jesus says, quiet, be still. Immediately the clouds are gone. Immediately the sea turns into glass. That's the God that we're in the storm with. I don't know what your storm is that you're going through. I don't know what's happening. But what we need is just what the disciples needed. We need more faith. We need faith in the one who can deliver us and bring us through these problems. The question, why are you so afraid in the storm? When we're in that storm, we're with His presence. When we're in that storm, we're there possibly, most likely, for His purpose. My hope is not in the boat. My soul is anchored in Jesus. What about you? Stand with me, please.